Welcome to Conversations Different, a podcast from the Santa Fe New Mexican about interesting people, places, and issues of northern New Mexico. This is Inez Russell Gomez, and this week I'm talking to Dr. Shelly Lowe, the new president for the Institute of American Indian Arts. Welcome, President Lowe.
Good morning, Inez. So glad to be here.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see you back in the Southwest.
I know I'm very excited to be in the Southwest. It's about time that I came home.
That's right. Yeah, you're not supposed to get outside the four sacred mountains, or at least have them in vision, I thought.
That's right? So it's a little bit difficult. You got to come back all the time and get yourself set straight before you go
Yeah.
back out.
That's right. If you don't have mutton stew and some fry bread at least once in a while, is it really living?
Exactly. And the nice part about that, Inez, my cousin owns Hope's Fry Bread in Mesa, Arizona. So whenever I get to Phoenix, I can go have my mutton stew and fry bread.
Oh, that man, having relatives like that is just like joy, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're here, and how are you enjoying your first weeks on the job? Your start date was August 1st, and this is like a month as we're talking.
Exactly. So I have been, I've been on the job a month. I arrived just in time for Indian Market. So I was telling everybody it's the best way to kind of introduce someone to their job is to throw them into Indian Market. I met more people, people that I knew from the past, but new people who we've worked with. We had the big IAIA gala. So I met many of our supporters, and that was a wonderful way to start to see the amount of support that IAIA has from not just the Santa Fe local community, but from the region and the state as well.
Yeah. It's really interesting too when you start thinking about the top artists in their genre in the world even, and they went to IA, and it's like you have a huge impact beyond Santa Fe.
We do. And, sometimes I'll be reading about a new exhibit or an artist all over the United States, right? And you kind of read a little bit more about the artist, and sure enough, went to IAIA.
That's right. Yeah, and now Patricia Michaels is off to teach at Parsons in the fall,
Yes,
which is kind of a nice mix of, Native intelligence, education, experience, and art skills. And now she's going to be back in, fancy New York. So
exactly. And we've got all these amazing writers. It's been fabulous to see what our alumni do.
yeah. Yeah, the writing, I think, has been just to me one of the most exciting things of the last 10 years. It's like it's a renaissance, just as Lloyd Keevan had the renaissance to beginning, with the modern Indian art movement. Then you get the writing today.
Yes, I agree. And, there was an event with Joy Harjo at one point. She talked about that kind of group that she had kind of gone through school with. She and Simon Ortiz, Scott Mamade, Lucy Tabahansa, Leslie Mormon, Silko, and how we're kind of seeing this resurgence now of these great Native writers who are working together, supporting each other, and really making an impact in their publications.
Yeah, it's been exciting to watch and to read because they're great stuff, and like Ramona Emerson's mystery set in Albuquerque, there's like they give you chills. I think. Yeah, that's pretty good. So as we're talking about, IAIA is important, for arts education, cultural education, museums, writing. It's had a big impact on the world, and why do you think it's been so successful?
I think, right. And I think, part of it is the vision of the leadership that has really transformed this institution, right? From being a high school in 1962 to really educating some of the top Native artists and writers that are out there and understanding the impact that has. One of the things that you see in Santa Fe, right, there's a huge emphasis on Native art. You see that in the Northwest coast. You see that in Alaska. You don't see it all over the United States in the same way, but you see individuals who really love Native art. And we've seen kind of this shift in Native art where Native art was kind of done for the economy, right? people who were interested in buying native art wanted to see a certain type of native art, a certain style. Now we see native artists doing the style that they want. They're being very contemporary, very creative. They're telling really great stories and sending messages, but they're doing it the way that they want to do it and using their traditions and their cultures to really put some unique and amazing art out into the world that we're seeing go global, going all over the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's different. It's not just that they're doing what they want, it's that they're not having to create art for galleries or for trading posts or because their teacher at the Indian school in Santa Fe wants them to draw a certain way. It just breaks open the box and then, the sky's the limit.
Yes, exactly. So we see, like Cara Romero, who's out there, and galleries are taking in her photography and they're kind of thinking about native photographers and what does that look like and what is the subject that they're doing. We see Jeffrey Gibson, doing this wonderful, just showing art all over the world. And people are being introduced to native artists in ways that they weren't before.
Yeah, no, that's true. I remember when I used to do the special sections here at the New Mexican, one of my favorite stories I ever got to do was the year that Sheldon Harvey won Best of Show at the Indian Market for a painting, and learning, his story of literally taking horsehairs out of the horse's tail to make a paintbrush because he was, poor, he was broke. And that's how he painted, is with horsehair paintbrushes, because he had to paint.
Yep.
And now when you look at his work, it's not anything but Sheldon Harvey. It's incredible growth as an artist and person.
Right, and I think that that's one of the wonderful things about IAIA. It's an outlet for all of these young Native artists and non-Native artists who are really interested in supporting Native art and getting the word and information out there about it. We offer this great opportunity for people to come in. We have great resources. They learn from each other. We have alumni who come in and work with our students. I mean, it's a really unique and special place.
No, it is, and I tell people it's a really good deal in terms of tuition. So if your kid wants to go off to art school, you might do better staying close to home and then using your money for a graduate school, because it's very affordable and the facilities are just gorgeous. I mean,
Yeah.
you have a great campus.
Yes, we do have a great campus, and I agree. And we've got a number of scholarships. We work very hard with supporters to ensure that our students they can graduate with little to no debt. And that's a real goal of ours.
Yeah. And if you're coming from a background where maybe you're the first college student in your family, or maybe your family has a lot of kids and it's just hard to get all of them through college, it's better to graduate and not have choices, because when you owe a lot of money, you don't have very many choices.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this story I read about you when you left. So you grew up in Ganado, Arizona.
That is correct. I grew up
Yeah.
in Ganado.
Yep. And so you go to University of Arizona, you're a Flynn scholar, you're, top student in your class. And was it it was a shock for you, it seems like.
It was really, really difficult for me. I grew up on the Navajo Reservation, very small community, didn't spend a lot of time, in larger cities like Phoenix, hadn't, as far as I could remember, hadn't actually been to Tucson before I chose to go to the University of Arizona. And it was a complete shock. The temperature was different, the environment was different, the people were different. And I was not prepared for college. Nobody had ever kind of sat me down or told me, this is what it means to go to college. This is what you have to do. So I was just I was just in I was in bad shape trying to get through that first year.
It's I think the difference, I love one story I read where you said they were so loud, the people are so loud.
They
And it's
were.
just, yeah.
The girls, they were so loud, and I was just like, "Why are you so loud?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense."
No, it's like being a native student in class and, having the teacher tell you your son doesn't talk enough. And it's like, it's a different way of learning. And I sent my kid to go after school in 8th grade to talk to the teacher so she would understand that he knew what he was talking about with Shakespeare, but he would not speak in class. And I was
Yeah,
just like, dude, you got to get used to the outside world. But, it was hard. And
yeah,
imagine going to a college
yeah.
and you're coming from a place that's completely different.
And it wasn't just, that they were loud, that, they,
Yeah.
dressed different, they talked nonstop, and they were kind of really in your face and asking you questions, and it was just kind of like, "You
Yeah.
need to step back, I don't know you."
You know, that's a different way of dealing, and yet not everybody can survive that experience and then go on to have a successful academic career as you have done. So what was in you that you stayed and you said, "I'm gonna do well," and you got straight A's and you succeeded?
Well, I got really upset after that first year because I failed calculus and I'd never taken calculus before. It was a totally different language. And I was angry. I was angry because I knew that I was a top student. I knew that I had the ability to do well, but I just couldn't understand why I wasn't doing well. So after my freshman year, when I finally came back to campus, I changed some of my majors. I started taking American Indian Studies classes, and I met a faculty member, Dr. Mary Jo Tippecanoe Fox, and I had a conversation with her. She just kind of wanted to get to know who I was, and I talked about how, difficult my transition was, and she started to tell me that this was normal, that this was what, we often see with Native students. I mean, that freshman year, I had all kinds of people telling me I was gonna fail because Native students fail, I'd never graduate. I only got into college because 'cause I'm Native, I only got a scholarship because 'cause I'm Native, and I shared many of these comments with her, and she just point blank said, "Don't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about." And I needed somebody to say
Yep.
that to me, to say, "Do not listen to these people. They don't know anything about you, where you came from, and then let's just move forward and work from there." So
Ah,
that was kind of that point, and I decided that I was going to figure out why I had a problem, why it was so hard for me, and then I was going to make that kind of my work because I was seeing my fellow Native students dropping out, not coming back. Looked at the research and the data and saw really how difficult it was for Native students to graduate college.
right. That's a really important lesson, and on that note, we'll take a quick break and be back in a moment with more Conversations Different.
We make renewable doable. We're positive energy solar for a cleaner, brighter future for all. Positive energy's the right call. Feel good about your energy bill. Help save the planet too. Your trusted solar company, working hard for you. Generate positive energy. Positive energy solar.
We're back with Conversations Different, talking to President Lowe from the Institute of American Indian Arts. You're coming to IAIA at a really exciting time. Dr. Bob Martin retired this summer, and the school has just so many exciting things going on. Talk about what it means to step into an institution that's thriving and kind of what you get to do to make it, improve even more.
Well, I have to say, Inez, thank you so much for talking about it as an exciting time. There's kind of a lot of conversation about how this is a difficult time with everything that's happening with the federal government and with funding. But I absolutely agree with you. I find that one, IAIA has had such a nice, stable, positive leadership um, that has really created kind of a base for what the institution has become. And we see fairly often, particularly with tribal colleges and universities, that leadership can change. And when leadership changes year after year or after a couple of years, the institution doesn't have that stability. So IAIA comes with a really nice, stable base that Dr. Martin has worked very hard to ensure is in place. So there's an expansion in what students are able to major in and the work that they are able to do. And I think that that is even more exciting. It's one of the things about coming in, being the new president, is you want to continue all that excitement, you want to continue to grow it, but you also want to kind of take a step back and say, okay, what is it that we're doing? What are we doing really well? Where do we need to think about going in the next 5 to 10 years? What is out there that we need to expand upon? And really think about. And everybody seems to be really excited about doing a lot of that work. And that makes me excited.
You're excellent, and now you build on that excellence to get
Exactly.
to an even higher level. Um, and you just got a new donation from the co-foundation, which is going to give you property in Midtown Santa Fe, money to maintain it, and you're going to expand your footprint on Santa Fe.
Yes, and we're very excited about that, and we're so delighted that the co-center was interested in handing over the property to IAIA. What I think we're really excited in terms of that new acquisition is that we can have a graduate campus. So a lot of our MFA programs are going to be housed there. We're going to have this kind of really nice physical footprint for our graduate programs, but also extra space. So we'll have some gallery space, we'll have some studio space. And as you know, studio space is what the students need. And the more that we can have it, the better it's going to be.
That's right, because it's hard to do sculpture, in your backyard or in a place in a classroom or something. You need room.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, they don't want to be falling all over each other, which I've seen in their studio spaces by the end of the year.
Yeah, boy, that's true. I tell you, one of the best gifts or just occasions in Santa Fe that's not so famous is the IAIA Christmas Fair. You can go get all your shopping done, and some of the things are kind of big, and I always wonder where they make them.
Yes, exactly. Well, we have wonderful space here, and students really do have that opportunity to kind of dabble in everything. Some of them come in wanting to be painters and then decide I want to do sculpting. Some of them come in and say I really want to do cinematic arts, but then they decide that what, I really like painting and I really like doing jewelry work, and so it's a real opportunity to try out and figure out what you want to do best.
Yeah. And that's really the whole point of college, I think, is to not work to get a paycheck, but to work to educate your mind and get new experiences so that you're flexible in this world we're in, which is changing all the time. The more you can do, the better off you are.
Right. And I do think that one of the things that we always want students to do is draw on their strengths. And, I told the students, you each bring your own unique gift, but you have your cultural strengths. And we want to make sure that those get strengthened, that you are able to draw upon that, as you go out, when you graduate and you're working and doing jobs and traveling all over the world, those strengths, those cultural strengths are the important things that you need to always have with you.
Yeah. And there's so much you can do. If let's say you're an artist, but maybe you're just not that great. Some people are talented, but not superbly talented. You can take your skills and, do art as art education. You can work in museums. I gives you a background to do a lot of different things that aren't just necessarily being a working artist.
Yes, exactly. And the wonderful thing about it is the opportunities that students have. So, we've had students that work with Disney over the summer. We have some students that are connecting with Ralph Lauren. You do get that opportunity to be in museums as interns, and you really get to see, if you don't do the art, but you can be the person that supports the artist, whether that means showing their work in museums, whether that means getting them connected to these major companies. There's so much opportunity for getting a degree at IAI.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think just taking history from a Native American perspective also kind of opens your mind, because even if you grow up on a reservation, you don't always go to a school that tells a complete history. You might go to the school in the town next door. And when you come to a school where all the other students are indigenous and you see the breadth of tribes in the nation, I think it really opens your world up.
Yes, I agree. And I think that it's one of the things, we have Indigenous liberal studies here. When I grew up on the reservation, nobody kind of explained to me why we have reservations. Nobody
Yeah.
really talked about, what has happened over the past 200 years that has caused tribal communities to be kind of in the state that they are in, right? And these are the things that you often learn for the first time when you go to college, and it kind of opens your eyes and you say, oh, now that explains why things are the way that they are. But then it also gives you the opportunity to say, okay, now what is my part? What is my role? How can I do things to improve what is happening or improve what I see at home? So there's always that opportunity for students here as well.
That's right. And it kind of gets you in an environment where you understand some things that happen in our world are the product of systemic choices as opposed to individual failures. And I
Exactly.
think that helps people, be committed to changing the system in some ways.
Yes, when you get to see that bigger picture, right, then it really does kind of sometimes blow your mind and you think, oh, that really isn't what I thought before, but look at that. And let's make sure that everybody knows this.
Yeah, yeah. I remember in the early days of like investigative journalism in New Mexico, things like TV stations would go and take three people to get a loan at a car dealership in Gallup or Farmington. And guess what? The person who was not Navajo got a really good deal, and the person who was Navajo, it was not good. And just like reminders of just systemic ways that racism is built in, even though we're not supposed to talk about that anymore, I think is so helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You had an interesting career, of course, after. So you graduate from University of Arizona, you work there, you get your advanced degrees, and then you ended up, did you go straight to Yale after that, or where did you go after University of Arizona?
Yeah, so when I was at the University of Arizona, I was working in American Indian Studies. I did my master's. I had finished all of my coursework for my PhD. And at that time, the conversation was you cannot work at the institution where you get your doctorate degree. Right? You have to go someplace else. You have to get some experience elsewhere, and then maybe you can come back. So that meant I had to apply for jobs at, at other places. And I had put in an application for this job at Yale University, and a few months had gone by. And so I just figured nothing was going to happen. But they gave me a call and said that we want to interview you for the job. And I said, oh, okay, great. I got off the phone, and I tell this all the time. I had to look up where Yale University was at because I actually didn't know where it was at. I didn't know where it was located. I knew it was far away. And I knew, kind of the name, right? We kind of know those names of some of these Ivy League institutions. But I went and I did an interview with a group of students, Native students, and I was just so impressed by them. They were so smart. They were coming from their tribal communities, and they were just trying to make it at this Ivy League institution, very, very far away from home. And I got on the plane after spending a couple of days with them, and I cried because I was like, please, I prayed, just please take care of these students, let them be okay. Because I could feel how alone they felt. They were so far away from home. They didn't have a Native person working with them. But then I got the job. So that was a positive thing. And I moved all the way across the country to New Haven, Connecticut to work with these students. It was wonderful.
See, your prayers were answered.
They were.
Yeah.
I just wanted them to be okay.
That's right. And that note, we'll take a quick break and be back with more Conversations Different.
This is Patrick Dorsey, publisher of the Santa Fe New Mexican. Looking to reach a wider audience and grow your business? For 175 years, the Santa Fe New Mexican has been the trusted voice of Santa Fe, with unmatched local reach in print and online. In addition to our long-standing, independent, family-owned newspaper, we have a full-fledged marketing team with the expertise to help you succeed in the 21st century. From traditional print to precision-targeted digital advertising, we have the tools to connect you with your ideal customers. Partner with us and see the results for yourself. Advertise with the Santa Fe New Mexican and unlock your business's full potential. Visit us at santafenewmexican.com/advertising or call us at 505-995-3852. Thank you.
We're back with Conversations Different, talking to President Shelly Lowe of the Institute of American Indian Arts. What has surprised you about your first weeks on the job? What have you learned?
That's a good question. I think, I was a little more surprised at how many supporters we actually do have here at IAIA. I knew that there were a lot of donors. I knew that we had a lot of people, who were really writing in, trying to make sure that our federal budget was going to be stable and where we're going to be okay. But to see the amount of people who really are interested and want to support not just the institution. What I think I'm a little bit more surprised about is how many of the individuals want to support the students. They want to give to scholarships. They want to make sure that students are able to get through IAIA without having to think about the financial burden or the financial stress that might come with going to college. So that's been really, really exciting. And to see how many people are, familiar with the institution, know what's happening, and are very interested in hearing how things are going to go.
It's good. Yeah, I think it's made a big impact in Santa Fe, and I think having the museum downtown really helps because you're a college with, the greatest contemporary Native art collection practically in the whole world.
Yes,
And
exactly.
yeah, and it's right here, and it's open on Mondays when some of the other museums are closed. So
Yes,
that,
and the nice thing about the museum as well is, we're really focusing on contemporary Native art, but at the moment we've got an exhibit with a indigenous group from Taiwan, right? So
oh,
it's
wow.
not just work that we're showcasing here in the United States, it's indigeneity and indigenous contemporary art around the world.
That's right. And that kind of shows the connections, I think, globally, which is always kind of comforting to know that you're not alone in the way you see the world necessarily.
Yep, and the experiences that you are having, and the way that you kind of think about the environment, right? And the importance of place and where you are, how you live in the world. So we see a lot of overlap and connection, particularly if you go and see this contemporary Indigenous Taiwanese exhibit. It really is about who we are in the world, what is our place, and how do we take care of it.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting difference even between not necessarily indigenous New Mexicans, but just New Mexicans who've been here a long time. We have a sense of place, as do indigenous peoples. And when you move around the United States, which I was lucky enough to do in my 20s, and you obviously did, it's interesting living with people that don't have a sense of place.
I agree. But also to understand that people that don't have a sense of place, but also don't have a better sense of actually what the diversity is in this country. I had the opportunity in my just previous position to travel all over the United States and to meet individuals who are very unaware of what kind of diversity, what kind of cultures, what it's like to be in other parts of the United States.
Yeah.
That kind of knowledge is lacking in many cases. One of my most favorite visits, we had come here, actually. We were up in Las Vegas. We went to New Mexico Highlands to meet with a group of community activists and leaders after the fires from a couple of years ago.
Oh,
And to talk to them about what does it mean to their communities to kind of come back together, to make sure they are able to heal, make sure they are able to kind of repair some of the damage that was done from the fires. And some people were crying and they were talking about the decades of family who have lived here in this part of New Mexico, the crops that they have that, got burned up and they've lost, to talking about livestock that they've had forever and knowing where the livestock would run to if they were going to be trying to get away from the fire, but FEMA not allowing them to go in and find their livestock and bring them back out. Like how difficult that was, but how beautiful it was to see them all come together to talk about the strength of their community, to talk about what they were going to do to make sure that they could be stronger, that they could get through it, that they could rebuild the things that needed to be rebuilt. It was just absolutely beautiful.
yeah. That's. I grew up a block or two from Highlands because that's where my family was from, and they are very resilient. And there were people that stayed in the hills during the fire, which did not surprise me at all because they're just not going to leave their land if they can help it. And
Yeah,
and
exactly.
but they knew how to survive. We didn't lose anybody except for some people that were caught on a road because I think they were visiting and they didn't really know what to do. So we were very fortunate, as bad as that fire was, that there was not as much loss of life as they'd hoped or as
Yeah.
they expected to see. it was a crazy time.
It was. And,
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful to see everybody come together and to kind of learn more about the decades of history that of communities there and families. But it's been even more beautiful to be here and see the amount of rain that has been falling in the past few weeks, and to know that that area is going to be rejuvenated very quickly.
Yeah, that's true. And they've done a lot of murals in town. They're doing a lot of rejuvenation and renovation in the city itself. So that's kind of exciting to see, because my mom always used to joke that the Depression happened and it never left, and she was always waiting for Las Vegas to be the beautiful little town it was when she was a girl.
Yeah.
And I think she would be happy to see it if she was still with us. Um, so you were at Yale, and then you go to Harvard and do the same thing, and then you become the National Endowment for the Humanities chair, that's a huge job and really impactful on the cultural life of the country.
It's a major job, and it was a job that I was asked to apply for, and I thought, there is no way I'm the person to do that job. It was, I mean, this is a national presidentially appointed position, and I had been on the council, so I was familiar with the agency, and I was familiar with the fact that it was white men who had headed this agency for the most part. There was one white woman who headed the agency, but as far as I could tell, there had never been a non-white person, and particularly never been a Native woman who had run this agency. But I had a really good friend and colleague who said, "You are going to interview for this job." She said, "It's not going to hurt you to interview." And she said, "And you're going to get the job, and you're going to do a good job. And every other person, she said, every white man's going to think that they can do the job. And if they got the job, they would do a bad job. But you're going to take the job and do a good job." So,
Wow.
she just said, "Suck it up and do the interview."
Yep.
Which I did.
You've had good friends to tell you, yeah, you're very good at what you do, and you can do it. Because a lot of people, men especially, will say, "Oh, I can do that," and they have none of the qualifications. Whereas a woman will look through a resume and say, "Well, I haven't done this one tiny thing, so I better not apply." So
That is very true. And, I really didn't think that this was
Yep.
the type of job I could do, but thankfully I did it. And I got into the position, and it was the previous chair that I had been on the council with. His name is Bro Adams. He said to me, "Oh, it's the best job in the world." And I have to actually agree. It was so amazing to see the humanities work that's taking place across the country. I went into small communities, rural communities, major institutions and universities and museums, and I just got to see the beautiful diversity of cultures that makes up this United States. And I got to talk to so many individuals. And it was really exciting to see how people were so invested in the humanities work that they were doing. The bigger challenge, though, was traveling the country and trying to explain to people what humanities is.
that's right.
That's not the easy part. But it was wonderful. It was beautiful. And I hope that, in my times talking to individuals, I was trying to be as encouraging as possible, and letting them know that the agency was seeing the work that they were doing, that we were thinking about how we could ensure that the funding from the agency was reaching all pockets and all corners of the country.
That's right, because one thing we forget in New Mexico sometime is that, a person in rural Appalachia, or, in Wisconsin, or different places, parts of the country, they have cultural traditions that they really value, and humanities grants such as you guys gave help keep them alive.
Yes, exactly. And help keep those teachings alive, right?
Yep.
Because a lot of what I saw were, in some cases, the elders in the community that were coming together and were saying, this history and this culture needs to be saved and captured, and what do we do? And they were kind of just taking these tasks on their own, with very little funding, with very little support, because it was so important to them to make sure that that history and the beautiful, rich culture that they had was going to be carried on. And they were doing amazing, amazing work.
Yeah, that's so important, and it keeps us connected to our roots and our past in a way that we can then be more present to have a better future, I think.
Exactly. And, the trip that I did up to Las Vegas to meet with the community members, that was work that New Mexico Humanities Council was supporting and putting together. And so it's because of our state councils and the work that they do that a lot of this can happen. And then, then my job could come in and I could say, let's shine much more of a national light on this work and make sure that people know what's happening. But yeah, our New Mexico Humanities Council was really amazing and has been doing some great work.
That's good. So the fall semester is underway. You're here. You're hopefully starting to get unpacked in your house. And what do you see as just like the immediate future for, I guess you've got an open house coming in a couple of weeks with the Santa Fe Community College.
We do. Yep. We're
Yep.
going to have open house on the 19th, 18th, 19th, 18th or 19th. It's one of those days.
Yes. And how do you go about your day to, get grounded and figure out what you're going to do next?
So, well, right now it's a lot of listening sessions. So I've been we have a president's cabinet. So I've been trying to meet one-on-one with everybody. We'll do a president's cabinet meeting together. I will be doing a listening tour across campus. So meeting with all the different departments and offices just to say hi, get to know everybody. And then, coming back around again to think much more strategically about what is happening. Where do they find the strengths in the work that they're doing? What are the opportunities that we have to move some things forward? Are we, seeing any difficulties anywhere, and how do we deal with that? So it'll be a lot of just getting to know the institution right now, how it's set up, how it's administered, and where, we can really find avenues to improve the work that we're doing and make sure that we are maintaining kind of our status as this top tier institution that really does make an impact around the world.
Yeah, that is a great place to close because that is exactly what IAIA does. Thank you. And this has been another Conversations Different. We'll be back next week. Thank you for listening to Conversations Different, hosted by me, Inez Russell Gomez, editorial page editor for the Santa Fe New Mexican. Our weekly episodes would not be possible without your support. We hope you enjoy them and keep listening. New episodes drop every Tuesday. Consider signing up for our newsletter so you never miss an episode, and while you're at it, consider subscribing to the Santa Fe New Mexican. Our podcast is available by visiting our website, santafenewmexican.com/podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Conversations Different with Inez Russell Gomez is produced by Matt Dalside and Ernesto Cisneros, published by the Santa Fe New Mexican, a local and independent newspaper owned by Robin Martin.